I think there's a lot of follow your dreams, and I see a lot of disappointed people.
Do you believe in luck in a business sense?
People within my sphere of influence, who I look up to, or people that have become successful, from what I understand, have rarely become successful through luck. As a young person, I was told to write down my goals. Do you want money? Do you want recognition in a certain field? Do you want, validation by your peers or by the free press? Or do you want, a whole load of gratuitous... Decide what it is you want.
But you can elaborate more if you'd like.
What's happening? It's somebody who's literally worked their way out from a slum, and success to them is literally the difference between living and dying. And ambition holds a whole different value over there. So they will literally kill to succeed. I think you learn the most about yourself, one, when you get punched in the mouth, and two, when you're absolutely physically exhausted.
I've realised what I wanted to do for a while. I've only put pen to paper in the past 6 to 12 months. Now I'd say I'm doing what I really want to do, right? But that's cool. That's 10 to... I'm 30. Like, it's not the end of the world.
No one wants to go through life by themselves.
I'm going to agree with you more. Favourite book?
Haven't read one.
Yeah, I thought you might say that.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Babylonia Media and our very first podcast series, The Entrepreneur's Experience. When they're starting off on their journey, entrepreneurs love being surrounded by other creative and energetic people working in flexible workspaces. So it's very appropriate that this series is sponsored by SpaceMade. SpaceMade transforms buildings to create enjoyable and immersive working spaces for entrepreneurs and remote workers alike. We in Babylonia have a space at one of the locations and have found it a great environment to work in. SpaceMade has accessible workspaces throughout the UK. Check them out at www.spacemade.co. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Babylonia Media and another episode of the Entrepreneur's Experience with Leslau. He's the owner of Confetti Group and OJ Brands. Confetti Group is focused on mass markets with personal care products, in particular hair care, skin care and deodorant, which they supply across 20 markets, including Africa, the Gulf, India, Pakistan and Asia. OJ Brand is a mid-market homeware brands business focused on fast-growing categories. Their primary product is Can You Sleep? That is right.
Correct.
Of which they supply in over 2,000 stores in the UK and process over 5,000 orders a month online. Ori, I'm going to start with one quick question, which is, you said that you feel the retail industry is particularly too sophisticated, oversaturated and data-driven. Why is that?
The retail industry?
The retail industry. You did tell me that, right?
I don't think I said it was too oversaturated.
You said too sophisticated.
The retail industry was too sophisticated?
Your exact words were, you said, I feel that the retail industry is too sophisticated, oversaturated and too data-driven.
To not use the information available.
I don't know if this is a statement. I'm just trying to find out why you said that.
Ah, okay.
Is that wrong?
I think potentially...
Would you rephrase it?
I think potentially you may have misconstrued what I meant to say, or meant.
What did you mean?
I think there's too much data available for ego to get in the way of good decision making in business.
Okay.
And I think
so if you could you elaborate?
Yeah, absolutely. So there is such a wealth of information available that making good decisions in business is much less difficult than it used to be. And you don't need a big, bolshy, opinionated business owner to make decisions anymore. So if you have that ability to remove the ego from the decision making and use the information that's available at our fingertips, be it online or some of the super sophisticated systems they have that they used to operate, goods in stores, supermarket, department stores, etc. We can make some really well-informed decisions, without the need for any ego at all.
So I was wrong in the fact you actually think the data is the good part. Is that?
I think data is the most phenomenal part.
Yeah, and that you think that should be almost solely the decision. Don't have any ego.
Not solely. I think that
in the sense of like you said, don't be too catch onto one idea and think, oh, that's it. That has to be right. It's my gut feeling.
Listen, I think in business, good business people typically have an innate, they have a vision. They have a great connection with a category. I don't think it's to say that data should overrule everything, because I do think intuition plays a large part as well. But I think that if that can be supported by as much data as possible, really, without wasting too much time on it and trying to be over calculating these things, I think don't let ego overrule good decision making.
Okay.
Can I say something? I know you're interviewing me, but I actually really like you in this setting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, seriously, I actually think you always should have been in entertainment.
Well,
because we've crossed paths in various settings.
Yeah, we have.
You've let me into nightclubs, you've passed me rugby ball.
I have.
But actually, I'd say that this setting suits you the best of them all.
Well, I appreciate you saying that.
It feels like you always should have been here.
That's very nice of you to say. I mean, like I said to you previously, the reason why I wanted to do this is essentially because I've always had an interest in TV and radio, and I thought potentially I could be good at it, perhaps because of the skill set, and this is a chance to do it myself. So yeah, I appreciate you saying that, mate.
You look like you're going to make it work.
Okay.
For whatever that's worth.
Okay, well, at the right time, maybe we'll join forces. Who knows?
Maybe.
We won't talk about that on camera, but we will afterwards.
Okay, we'll go into the numbers later.
Emerging markets. You said you're fascinated in emerging markets, and I think that's in part because of what you did earlier on in your career. But I guess first, could we start with why you're so fascinated in emerging markets and maybe how you got to that?
Yeah. So I grew up. I skipped uni. Became a salesman at a young age. Was working principally for a company called Pentland, who at the time owned Lacoste and Reebok. I worked for neither. I was put in charge of a premium women's denim account and made to do denim trainings on the shop floor in Harrods and Topshop. Best training you could possibly get is trying to show women how best to wear denim.
Coming from a guy, yeah.
Unbelievable. In any case, grew within that company, did all right, hopped about a bit, working in various sales positions, realised that I loved sales, but realised that the UK was a very saturated market. And had this, I think it was from an Attenborough documentary or something, and I saw they were filming in India, and I just thought, how many people there are, how much opportunity must exist in that place? And I thought, listen, I want to go work there, and a friend's family happened to own a business that was focused on sort of emerging markets across Africa and India, and had a head office out in Dubai, and so I went and interviewed, got a job out there as a salesman, ended up being sales director out there for a division that looked after about 400 distributors in India. So ended up working out there for a few years, traveling to the most insane places, across India, just seeing things I never would have otherwise seen, realising that there was indeed that much opportunity. And that company sold 2 or 3 years after I joined them, and I got a small pay pack and a handshake. Myself and my boss at the time actually set up together a licensing and distribution business, bringing Western brands into the emerging markets. So on a licensing basis, so we didn't own product, they'd funnel product through us and we'd make our piece.
I guess just distribution.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Built that up, sold it, and then ended up building brands of our own.
And could you tell us a bit more about your sort of that early journey of, going to this company in Dubai, and then I know you told me in brief you were travelling across India trying to sell sort of products. I mean, that sounded crazy. And
talcum powder and soap.
Oh, really?
Correct.
And that literally went across the whole of India doing that?
Yeah.
Was it a whole different realisation of what, I guess, maybe it's cliche to say, but you see that what people are coming from there, and you just think, Jesus Christ, okay, now I've really got a battle. Was that must have been a massive realisation?
100%.
And I guess what would you, could you pinpoint what you really learned from that?
I think as a young salesperson, so I think the thing about being a great salesperson, in my opinion, is you got to be bullish, you got to back yourself, and you've got to be prepared to be told no 1,000 times just to get that one yes.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't have the staying power. And I backed myself, and I knew I was super ambitious, and I sort of backed myself to do well, whatever happened, whether it was in sales or anything else. And I think that ambition was put into perspective when I went to the emerging markets, when I thought, bring it on, I'll have anyone sort of mentality. And your competition isn't, a great salesman from the Midlands. It's somebody who's literally worked their way out from a slum. And success to them is literally the difference between living and dying. And ambition holds a whole different value over there. So they will literally kill to succeed. And it put my ambition into perspective, made me not realize I was less ambitious, but that there were people much more ambitious than me. And to compete in that arena, I had to up my game in a number of different ways. And the drivers that I use that get me out of bed in the morning, that kind of push me to go do what I do, became different. And in some cases, a little bit destructive. There's a lot of negative drivers out there that drive. So people are unbelievable. And I'd say that was probably the biggest part of the learning curve, is realizing, listen, you're not in the safety of kind of, you know, Great Britain and all the safety nets that it has there in terms of infrastructure, people, policing, everything. You're now kind of in the wild east. And if you want to compete, you've really, you know, you've got to have teeth as big as theirs. You know, there's a saying that it's not the size of the dog in the fight.
Yes, yeah, Mark Twain. Yeah.
Size of the fight in the dog.
Yeah, great. Yeah, it's very, very, very true. You said just now that I guess the reasons what get you up in the morning were much different once you went out there. Could you elaborate on that a little bit more? I'd leave it at that to start. Yeah.
No, it's a good question. I've long been of the opinion that you've got to pick your objectives, right? I was always told at a young age, I can't remember by who, to write down what you want to be and what you want to do in your life. Write down your goals, so you have something to measure yourself against as you grow and move through life. I've always done that, and I've always given myself very strict, fixed goals to work towards.
And you're talking very young, like teenage years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remind me the question again.
Well, just saying there's a whole different level of, I guess,
ADHD,
drive.
By the way, you have to remind me halfway through.
Yeah, no, that's fine. We'll talk about his ADHD afterwards. But you were talking very much in particular about the fact that when you went to India, and what you realise as a result, your drive in the morning now is a much different level of, compared to what it was before. What drives you is different. It's different. Different avenues that really push you that way. I just wanted you to elaborate on that to really understand, because I know some people have more obvious ones of like competition, whatever it is, but it sounds to me like there's more layers to that.
Yeah, no, there is. I think that, being brutally honest, success for me was about money. It was never about recognition, validation from someone else, a nice article being written, a fluffy TV piece. It's never been about that. I've had very strict financial objectives for various reasons. And I think that it made me realise, going out there, that there are lots of people who had those ambitions, and that was the arena I was now in. And whilst those today haven't changed so much, I definitely think it, you know, when you're young and you're trying to find an identity, especially in the business world, and win the respect of peers and competitors and whatnot, you can get a little bit lost in seeking that recognition and validation. I think that's probably something a lot of young people experience, whether in business or anything else, whether, you know, whatever field or arena you're in. But I definitely think it made me realise that I had to pick a goal and draw a straight line between where I was then and where I wanted to go, and really focus me. Not necessarily in positive ways. I mentioned there were potentially some negative aspects of that.
That's what I was interested in as well.
I definitely think that if you're too focused, you can become quite narrow as a person. And I think that you can block out some of the other important building blocks that other people may take more seriously. You know, work became potentially too much of an important part of my life. Money became too important. And
lack of focus on the human parts of life.
100%. And it was probably, until I got married when I was 28, it was probably only till I got back together with my now wife Sadie that I realised that I was missing big parts of the human component, and that I had been so focused, and people probably thought that I was a jerk because of it or whatever. I don't really give a fuck, but you know, because I wouldn't have achieved what I did if I hadn't been focused. But it made me realise, it put into context actually, you know, who I was becoming as a person. And I've managed to rein in some of those things and open myself up to developing those things, although that is a work in progress.
Yeah,
so
well, we always ask. Well, so you think for a while you felt you had to be deeply uncompromising and dogged, determined within the business, and that all else mattered, whereas now you start to realise that a lot of the human variables to your life actually not only are important to you, but actually will probably make you a more efficient, better person within the business sense as well.
100%. So I'll use this interview as an example. When I went into a sales pitch before, I would talk much more than I would listen. And actually somebody else you interviewed talked about this.
Yeah, one guy, he said that's how he started.
And you'd bite their head off.
Yeah.
Almost through fear that you're asked something you don't know, because you've prepared so much for that pitch. Sure. You want it so badly. But in doing that, you are so clearly unprepared, and it becomes so visible to the person you're talking to, whether in an interview or in a retail pitch to a panel of buyers, that you overcook it. And if there's anything I'd say I've learned about that in terms of, you know, wanting it so much and just so focused, is that you don't listen and expose yourself to potential weakness. You're not patient. You're all the opposite of all those things. So even in you asking me a question, I listen, I think about how that question makes me feel, and I answer a lot more honestly. Yeah, and I'd say that's not just something sales specific. I would say that's just a human reactionary kind of behavioral improvement that I've experienced as a result of kind of coming back into the normal world, moving back to the Western world, getting married, being part of a relationship and understanding more about myself, and exposing myself to, you know, those vulnerabilities. It's actually, you learning much more about yourself going through the process that way than I did when I was here. Buy my product, okay, way of saying buy, you know, and I'm probably more successful as a result.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's interesting you say that about, because in particular, for whatever reason, that reminded me of the fact that you, when we were talking before, and I think you wrote this in an email to me, but you said, I realised I was never going to be the smartest person in the room, but I would do whatever necessary to get there. I guess that was the driving, that second part about do whatever's necessary to get there, or like be one of the most successful, financially successful. Was that the only difference is now it's so more rounded, and you know, whatever the bigger picture is, there's so many more variables to it than just bottom line profit.
100%. I would say that I have a much more holistic and rounded understanding of, you know, what I want out of it. I mean, I know lots of people for whom the commercial objectives are the only things that matter.
But sorry to interject there, but you've also told me in the past that, I'm not trying to like overhold you to certain words, but
overhold me.
Okay, I will then. You told me in the past that you are still quite bottom line driven, but I guess what the difference now is it's not just profits; it's like high quality products in the right space. Is that the real differentiating?
Well, I guess there's two. Okay, fine. There's two parts to that question. I think two things that I'll say. One is, I think to be a business owner, you have to be driven by a bottom line of some kind. It'd be impossible to think you're going to build a big business and not think about its financial viability or success. Yeah. But I definitely say that I make much more considered decisions in terms of everything from hiring, product quality, spending more on some of the areas where, you know, I don't need to. You know, I'm a salesman. I'm not qualified with a degree or anything. I've learned different. You know, I've come up differently, and for that reason, I see a lot of value, and I very quickly pick up on good salespeople, and many of them are unqualified, as you know. And wherever I can, I'll try and make room for them in my business to hire them, because I know they possess something a little bit different. And sales, as you'll know, is the most valuable part of any business. So in terms of the human element, even if I can't afford a great salesperson, if I see someone and I get that energy, I'll try and make room for them. And just in that same vein, anyone who gets ahead in life, I think, should turn around and try and help someone else up.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So I would say I would be prepared to compromise bottom line, knowing that I've given someone the opportunity to go and do really well and build something for themselves.
Yeah.
Knowing ultimately, yes, it kind of benefits. Yeah, there's some kind of shared. Ultimately, yes, it does benefit the business. But I'm saying I'm not as shrewd in my decision making as I might have been if I was of the same mindset I was 10 years ago.
It's not as single minded.
Correct. I think there was another half to that question in terms of kind of bottom line decision making is, but I sort of probably answered it.
Well, I did. I think you were pretty on point with it, if I'm honest. But you can elaborate more if you'd like.
Boss is happy.
Tell us just a bit more about the structure of the two companies, and I did a very brief sort of description, but you've got OJ Brands and Confetti Group. So correct. What are they and what they do?
Yeah. So, sorry.
Take your time. George in the water.
No, right, cheers. So, OJ Brands is our UK-based, privately owned business which owns homewares brands, which includes CaliSleep.com, which is principally an online business but focused on the orthopedic sleep space, and is a growing portfolio of brands focused on some of the more sort of, I'd say, more mature areas or developed areas of homewares. Mm-hmm. And then we've got Confetti Group, which is based in the UAE. Again, it's a privately owned entity. We have the benefit with free zone companies there, which can be internationally, can be foreign owned 100%, no need for local partners, which owns a growing handful of brands focused on personal care. That's the older of the two. that owns our deodorant business, skincare, hair care. We have a trading business within it, and we supply about 20 export markets from there. But both wholly owned private entities, each with their various kind of respective shareholder groups.
And I'm going to quote something again from an article, but I read an article that you essentially, in 2016, where you said within 5 years you want to be in 20 plus countries, primarily for female products within the care space, especially in Africa, Asia, and all these continents. Would you say you're more or less there? Have you achieved that target?
Yeah.
And I get it's a simple answer in one way, but what were the fundamentals to getting there? And what I mean by that is, I think it's very important for people to listening to this, how, in very simple terms, you talked about writing stuff down. What are these fundamentals that you think get you to that place? Alongside your drive, actual categorical, very distinctive, rigid things you have to do to.
Yeah. No, I think I understand the question. So I think it's important to note that I don't, I never had a vision for a product we were going to sell. I was never passionate specifically about any one category. But I was, super interested in retail, and I kind of studied categories, and I sort of honed in on gaps in the market where I thought, there's potentially something interesting there. We can introduce something at that price point. This category is lacking this option. And then we kind of worked it backwards from there to a product. So that was very much the case with Confetti Group in the emerging markets, where I'd previously been selling personal care products. And so I was walking the supermarkets from ones in the middle of India to in the Gulf and Africa. And I noticed that people were prepared to pay a premium to own good quality fragrance. And so much of what was available in the market was kind of generic shit. And we thought, right, we still have to hit our price point. We knew that we couldn't retail for over $2.50 US, for example, but I wanted French fragrance in the cans. And so we thought, right, but we know we have to do X volume to be able to bring in premium fragrance from France. And so that's how we sort of modeled out the business. So it was about making sure we nailed the price point. We nailed the proposition, so we had a great product, but if we nailed the price point, the markets we could open would be limitless. And that's sort of how the first brand was launched. And once we'd opened sort of 15, 20 markets, those same distributors trusted us to give them good product. We had lots of feedback coming in that we need this soap, we need this hair removal product, we need it. And that's how we built the business, was catering to the existing demand, as opposed to kind of waking up and going, I've got a great idea for a deodorant brand and going to try and launch it. We said, what does the market need? And we went back, created it, and then put it back in.
Do you think you recognise that even in under economically sort of developed areas, there was still a need for certain, not high-end products, but that sort of middle-end product with regards to skincare, hair care, and that sort of thing. That's why you chose it? Because I guess when you went around India, my point would be is, even someone who's particularly poor, I guess maybe ladies or whatever, they still have a decent care for their hair or skin or whatever, regardless. And that, correct. You think that really, really fit?
Correct. Well, certainly you mentioned India. I mean, they're very hygienic, so they're very kind of self-aware. And on top of that, there's a very fast-growing middle class there. And there's, I mean, you only have to walk around to see that there's clearly a kind of that aspirational energy. A lot of people there looking to kind of improve their lives. And, first thing you do is buy, a toothbrush or a toothpaste, and then you get slightly better toothpaste. You buy, a bar of soap there historically was used to wash your clothes and wash your skin and everything else. Mm-hmm. And now people want a body wash. And, and fragrance is quite an interesting one because probably don't know, but fragrance would trigger a memory much faster than anything else. So smell is actually...
Yeah, smell is a big memory trigger. For sure.
Amazing. So we work with big fragrance houses in France and all the psychology behind the fragrances. Women are under-celebrated, notoriously in a number of these markets, sadly. And we thought this is an amazing opportunity to kind of uplift, females, give them fragrances which sort of celebrate their individuality. So they've got a big range of fragrances they can choose from. They're very affordable, $1-2 fragrances. Mm-hmm. But we put, very high concentrations in, and people seem to be enjoying them, move many millions a month.
Well, sorry, I'm going to go on a tangent a bit, but why Caddy Sleep? Why sleep products?
So again, the way the way that I conceive brands doesn't really change. I sort of do my homework on the categories. In case of sleep, I walked the sleep department of pretty well one of every retailer. So I went and walked about 20 stores in a day, all the bedding departments, be it, well, I won't mention names, but sort of John Lewis or Selfridges or Harrods or whoever. And I was looking at the overwhelming amount of product. So you've got a huge amount of product at a range of price points, from sort of £10 to £1,000. Mattresses, mattress toppers, duvets, pillows, and a whole other range of sleep accessories. There's Hungarian goose, feathers, hollow fiber, bounce back, deep sleep. Is it driven by comfort? Just in what I'm telling you, you're probably overwhelmed, because I was walking there. So how do people shop sleep? So I'm talking to the salesman on the shop floor, and they go, well, I tell them that this is a really comfortable pillow. I'm going, okay, but consumers over a period of time build up a palette for product, and they can make informed decisions whether they know or not about quality versus price. And it just appeared that sleep was lacking that entirely. So I almost felt like we today are no wiser about sleep than we might have been 20 years ago.
Yeah.
How do people shop sleep?
Real need for simplicity, really, to some extent.
Massively.
Yeah.
So I thought at that point I didn't know what we were going to do. I just knew this is an overpopulated category, clearly a massive in terms of value every year. Talking to the buyers, they move millions of units every month. But I couldn't name a sleep brand. So I knew sort of at the top end we had Temper. That was sort of £130 price points, I found out. And then go on Amazon, you've got loads of generic stuff at around £10, £20. And then nothing in the middle, talking to the everyday consumer. And definitely nothing educating the consumer. So I thought, right, let's look at that 30 to 60 price bracket, same way that I do with the deodorant. And I thought, how can we educate the sleeper? Right, so whilst this was going on, my wife was pregnant with our first child, and she was sleeping with a pregnancy pillow, which is sort of like a body pillow. And I nicked it. I'm a terrible sleeper, horrible insomniac. Borrowed her pillow one night. I've never had a better sleep. So I thought, I've got all these thoughts about the sleep space, and I've slept with her body pillow, and then suddenly light bulb moment, I'm like, I've got to figure out, is this technology or whatever it is applicable to the mass market? Because I haven't seen them for sale anywhere. Went and saw an osteo, a chiro, physio, ended up going to see a mental health expert, went and saw a GP, put together this panel, said, right, we're reinventing the body pillow. Because I knew at that point that was going to be a hook product, because I didn't have to do a lot to excite a bedding buyer, given how boring and overwhelming their bedding departments were. I said, at least I can talk about that product. And then we conceived that. That resonated with a few buyers. We've got a few stores. We went away, used that same expert panel, which is still on the board today, to conceive about 25 other products addressing everything from sleep apnea right the way through to anxiety. We've got weighted anxiety blankets. The journey we take people on, Cali Sleep, through our website and in store, helps you learn more about yourself as a sleeper. So you can do a very quick sleep quiz, and it'll tell you, yeah, I'm a side sleeper, I'm a back sleeper, I'm a front sleeper, I've got neck pain, I have a snoring problem, I suffer with anxiety. And within 30 seconds, we lead you to a product which genuinely works and addresses your issue. So essentially, we cater for the most popular needs in sleep. Not reinventing the wheel, we're not putting rockets in space, but we're helping people understand a little bit more about themselves as a sleeper and engaging with product at prices they can afford.
Enough to make a difference, I guess, but not overdo it, so you're tracking people's sleep with a ring and all this sort of thing.
There's lots of sleep technology out there. That's not to say we're not looking at it and won't introduce it in due course, but at the moment we're having a really good run with these sort of 30, 40 products we've got, and we're working with the UK's leading retailers, and at the moment we're just trying to finesse that proposition before we kind of start investing heavily in other categories, although they are in the pipeline.
And you seem to be obsessed with that mid-range product price. Is that because I guess much like, say, fast fashion, where it's so cheap, that seems to be dying, people have had enough of it. Is it similar, I guess, parallel analysis on that point of view?
So it's a good question. I think deep down, I never liked to not be able to afford something. I always wanted something that, when I saw it and I liked it, I wanted it then. And I think that there is, we're playing on that kind of impulsion in consumer as much as we are, we're affordable year round. So there's kind of it's two-pronged. It's we want your repeat business because we're affordable enough for you to buy us a few times, Moreover, our core customer at Cali Sleep is a woman.
Yeah.
So she may buy a product for herself first, we hope, and then maybe buy one for a partner or a child. So there's that. And then there's just a general affordability, you know, for anyone. So that if someone, but bear in mind, we want Cali Sleep to be the first sleep purchase someone has ever made. And when I say first sleep purchase, people may have bought mattresses and pillows and duvets, but a lot of people haven't. They're pretty thoughtless decisions.
Yes, it's not considered.
It's the first considered decision that someone has made in sleep. And with brands, I think one of the most important things is that is potentially the start of a lifelong relationship with the consumer. Mm-hmm. And so if that first engagement is a good one, you have the opportunity as a brand owner to engage that person for life. That's quite a powerful thing.
Yeah, completely.
So if I can not only deliver you a good proposition that works and helps with your sleep problem, but I've done it at a price that you think is really good value.
Yeah, particularly justifiable, I think. Yeah.
Not only are you driving repeat business, you're instilling positivity in the mind of the consumer so when they see you again. When I hit you up with my edibles and my sleep tech next year, you probably have a greater propensity or greater chance, rather, of engaging.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I totally agree on that. And when you're talking like that, I think I mentioned this to you before, but I really get the impression you've got a great understanding or instinct of consumer psychology. Could you break that down? And if I could elaborate on that, do you really you obviously break down your thought process when you buy something? Do you think that's incredibly important if you want to understand retail?
Do you know what? There's two schools of thought. I meet people who are just straight visionaries, who do very little homework, don't really do any data analysis, and smash it with every product they introduce. And I've never been that guy. When I don't do my homework, I tend to fail the exam. Yeah. So,
or don't turn up to the exam.
And this kind of goes back to my, there's so much data available. Why aren't people using it? It's not about what Ori thinks. It's just let the market tell you, and you service that, requirement.
But there's definitely a 10-20%.
I think
considered analysis that's purely you, really.
I think I definitely have some kind of. I'd say I'm good at honing in on thresholds within retail pricing above and below which people have a sort of a high propensity to transact. Mm-hmm. So I do quite quickly hone in on opportunities within categories. If I do my homework on a category, I guess I've been blessed with something that kind of leads me to biting points within the price parameters of that category. So I would say in some senses, I definitely feel a connection with retail. I wouldn't say it's something totally unique to me. There are lots of people who have it, and to some people it comes completely naturally. I definitely have to do my homework to kind of prove my theory correct. I definitely am not the guy who wakes up and is Elon Musk.
You definitely believe in heavy preparation.
I would say heavy preparation, but I would say I don't run into these things thinking this is a knockout product. This is the price it's going to be at. Like I said, the market guides me as an operator. I look at what the market has, and I work backwards to a product. I can, and as long as I understand kind of the broadly the price range that people are engaging at today, I can kind of make my own assumptions within that, kind of spot gaps.
Okay. No, I totally get what you mean there, and we're obviously touching on retail, so I think it brings me on to a point that I think is quite important, especially I think I'd like to hear your perspective on it. There's a lot of talk in the UK at the moment about where retail's going. Would you mind giving us sort of your overall opinion on it and where you see it?
100%. It's a good question. Again, you've got good questions.
Hey, listen. Like you said, I'm at home. I'm at home, so I can think.
You're at home. I think that retail will always exist as a very important part of the overall consumer experience. I think that it will always have a place on our high street, albeit will probably become increasingly experiential, but will nonetheless be a crucial touch point in someone buying a product. I don't think people are going to be walking down high streets holding bags, clambering onto a bus for much longer. But if they're touching and engaging a product on a high street and buy it online, it still forms a very important part of that process. So I think we're heading that way. I think the last 8 months since COVID hit has kind of sped that up, but I don't really see it going anywhere. I think that the key to survival will be nailing hybrid or nailing omni-channel. And having an amazing e-com infrastructure
what do you mean?
support.
What do you mean more specific, exactly about when you say hybrid?
Hybrid means delivering business online and offline. So whether it be through kind of how we do through other people's stores or owning stores yourself. And hybrid would be operating both in stores and through websites, your own or dropship websites.
And that's, I guess, what you want to do. I mean,
that is what we do.
I mean, okay. So next level up from that. What the bigger proposition for you would to be have your own stores alongside a lot of online?
I would say long term, I would love to own something with a national footprint. I would love to be in charge of that last mile, bringing that experience to the customer. At the moment, I'm limited to just a website because we sell through John Lewis and Benson's, and although we do some great kind of POS in-store stuff, we've got pillow bars that kind of, have side sleeper, front sleeper, back sleeper, and you can kind of go through that journey in store. I don't really control it because I'm at the mercy of what the store wants it to look like or the space they want it to fit into. I would love to control some space and have like lots of stores across the country, but at the moment we're doing hybrid as well as we can, selling through other people's stores and through a series of websites either that we own or that we work through.
When you talk about stores, are you comparing to your likes of John Lewis? Is that the true vision, or would you hone it on lots of more small stores like like a body shop or something?
Well, I'm a huge fan of John Lewis. I actually do most of my shopping at John Lewis.
Okay.
So for me, that's kind of a day out.
But I mean, it's such an array of different products.
It is,
but
it goes back to your other question, which is that shopping is actually a day out for lots of people.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I'd love to own a John Lewis and have a creche in it and an amazing coffee shop. Fuck, we'd have a vodka bar, we'd have a club upstairs, everything.
For the dads while they're waiting, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. So in terms of experience, I would love to have like an extravaganza like that.
Yeah.
And I'd love to have them across the country.
Yeah.
In fact, I wish I wasn't a little further along in my career now, wasn't buying up one of the national retailers who are unfortunately going under and being able to do that now. But ain't got the money.
So that when we like you said, when we talked about the future of retail, that's the point, is that you don't see people giving up an actual experience forever. That human innate sort of test the product out, like you said, meet people, talk to them about it, that sort of thing.
I am bullish on the high street. It just, the dynamics change. The problem is retail today, real estate is such a huge line item and it eats so much into their bottom line that it's very hard to survive. And it's not the fault of the realtor or the landlord. It just is. To secure yourself a high footfall, retail space, you had to pay the rents to be there. But people are now seeing that it can be done differently, and I think rents will adjust to accommodate for that. People aren't doing as much business through their store; they can't then be asked to pay the same level of rent, or maybe stores will, move, or they'll transform into something different. I don't know what that is, but I know for certain the retail's here to stay. I think we love retail. I think as a young person going to a sweet shop, or an older person going and making, me buying prams or whatever shit I buy. Do you know what I mean? The sort of things I'm buying in my life at the moment, less exciting things.
But so these people who say, it's completely dead, you just don't buy that at all. It's rubbish to you.
I just think these things work in cycles, and there's only so long. I mean, how quickly did you get bored of Zoom quizzes or talking to your family on Zoom?
It's one of the reasons why, even when I started this business recently, 6 months ago, or whatever, and I was working from home, half the reason why I even came to an office space was simply because I had to be amongst it, and it's the same psychology there, I think.
I think after a while, it's numbing, and humans are built to engage physically. And what we're doing now, we couldn't replicate this on over a screen.
Yeah,
we just
true.
couldn't.
When people ask me, can I do a remote interview? I normally say no, because I just don't think it's the same thing.
And with your hand movement, you can't convey yourself, and you're just your comportment is completely different when you're behind the screen. Mm-hmm. The way we engage with each other is totally different. And for that reason, and it's not just, we banged on about retail here, but it's not just about retail, it's about everything, whether you're going to a cinema or a theme park, or going for a date, or going for a swim, or whatever. These are all physical things, and I think the world is built around that kind of physical activity.
Yeah.
Be it at the extreme level or the mundane. And for that reason, I think that retail will transform, and people won't be carrying shopping bags around, but it will still be as important a touch point in a transaction.
Yeah. No, it's making me think about something else, but we're going to move on slightly. Do you believe in luck in a business sense?
So I believe you make your own luck, but I would definitely say that there's luck involved. I think that you can position yourself to be lucky. I'm sort of a believer in hard work is so often the answer. The question is so often irrelevant.
Yeah,
is that a bit cheesy? But
no.
I just think that the people I know,
cheesy or not, it's
the
right.
people within my sphere of influence, who I look up to, or people that have become successful, from what I understand, have rarely become successful through luck.
Much more what? I mean, I read a quote the other day, which was basically, I can't remember who said it, but it was, I don't believe in luck, it's preparation, meeting opportunity, essentially.
100%. I mean, you've got to be poised, ready to capitalise on those opportunities as they come your way. And you've got to keep your head in the game. If you're not in the game, you wouldn't know an opportunity if it came by. Mm. So I think it's probably it's the same thing.
Would you, how would I ask this? Would you say you have like a core set of philosophies or principles within your drive forward when you work? And what I mean by that is I personally have 3 or 4 things that really matter to me with the way I work and what I intend to do with regards to elements of what I offer on an almost educational and informative basis in the content. These sort of things. Is there anything you could pinpoint there? The reason why I asked that is because I think it's so important, especially when younger, like some more people who are trying to aspire to be business people. I think it's very, it's funny you say you have ADHD, because I do actually think you break down your thoughts quite well, which is very interesting. Is there any way you're welcome. I'll give you a pat on the back after. But could you break down something like that for us? And take your time to think about that, obviously.
So, I'm not particularly philosophical, although I do like quotes by philosophers.
Yeah.
I would say that for me, work ethic comes before anything. And I think if you can instill a good work ethic in whatever it is you do, you stand a much higher chance of becoming successful. And successful can be measured in lots of different ways. It's not necessarily financial. Probably that's one of many different ways one can become successful. It's ultimately it's subjective. Thinking about
take your time. I mean, if I could lead you to maybe another example, I personally find that my life, and we touched on this before, my life outside of work filters so much into the way I go about my work. So that's everything from exercise to my general principles on, to be honest, how I treat people. I don't know if there's anything that you could align with on that.
I'm trying to connect the two in my head. They're not connecting.
Listen, it's not for everyone, that question, if I'm honest.
But I'm curious. Can you give me a second? I want to give you something
absolutely. Take your time. Actually, if you want.
I think that.
Go on.
I was told, I think I mentioned to you that as a young person, I was told to write down my goals. Mm-hmm. And it's been a really useful practice for me. It doesn't work for everyone, but at least it gives you something to measure your progress against. Walking in the dark, you would know what direction you're going without a few little kind of lights placed along the way somewhere, just to make sure you're heading the right way. And so every once in a while I check in with my goals. I still write my goals down, and they change, and and the course changes, but I always write my goals down. And that's kind of helped me navigate my way through life, my career, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. It's not a philosophical method.
No, but it's a principle that really helps.
It's something I do that underpins everything that I do.
Yeah.
I'd say, obviously one of those things was financial success. But what that now means to me in the context of my life, when I was young, I thought that meant sports cars and partying. And in my life now, it's changed slightly, your priorities change and everything else. So I'd say that having goals is important, and has probably helped, having those goals kind of there has helped me provided some structure in terms of my own development, my career, my personal life. But I would say that they have the context, but the meaning of those goals has changed slightly as I've grown. So I'd say that's one super important practice that I've had. That may have been a shit answer to your question.
No, I think that's a great answer. I think that's very on point.
And I would also say selecting an objective, and I was talking with your producer about this before, I think that if I were to give one piece of advice to young people, because I think there's a lot of follow your dreams, and I see a lot of disappointed people, and I see a lot of people who follow the dream, and then realize that maybe the dream wasn't actually what they wanted. And I think if at an earlier age, and I'm not saying at 11, but maybe at 21, or when you're kind of starting your first job or second job, or finishing uni or whatever it is, decide kind of what it is you're going after. And that kind of goes back to me writing the goals down. And if that's financial objectives, great, let it be those. Or if that's to be a part in a play, then let it be that. But at least you have that kind of that thing to help you, provide you with a little bit of direction. The thing is, if you don't have objectives that you're working towards, you can very easily get caught up in a vacuum and become very narrow and so focused on. I haven't articulated this one. I actually want to answer this question again.
For the record, I disagree with.
No. I would like
doing it very well.
I would like to frame it slightly differently because it's important. Because I know a range of people who, some of whom don't work, some of whom work in a whole range of different industries, but some of them are now 15 years into a career they don't want, and have kind of probably by most people's reckoning done all right, but are unfulfilled, feel disappointed, haven't received the validation or recognition that they want, and are kind of having these conversations with people over beers or whatever, and they're going, well, if I went back, actually I would have done it this way. And so I'm asking them questions like, let me ask you a question. Do you want money? Do you want recognition in a certain field? Do you want, validation by your peers or by the free press? Or do you want, a whole load of gratuitous... Decide what it is you want. Now, I get it. As a young person, you may actually not know. But I was blessed, and I'd say I was blessed because I knew early that I was interested in the money. I wasn't interested in... But
I also think... So I hope I'm not interjecting the thought too much, but... I also think you recognise your skills early, and I think that's the most important part. I think if I could, my frame of an element of that question would be recognise your skills first, and then start to discover what you like and what you care about. And I think that's 100%. 100%. That's completely what I think you did.
100%. And I think that unfortunately, kind of this is it Gen Z? Yeah,
Gen Z. Yeah. 16 to 25.
Throwing it around.
Yeah.
I think that they kind of conflict between lots of different careers and things, and to build the 10,000 hour rule is becoming increasingly difficult for people to hone in on a skill set and then use it to the best possible ability. It's becoming it's very difficult. And I know that from people I employ, from young people I interview.
Well, there's almost too many distractions.
They're spoiled for choice in terms of it's less about honing in on what you are good at and more doing, what you love in that moment until Instagram throws up a new opportunity and you kind of, young people are jumping around a lot, and I'm not sure it's to their potentially a little bit to their detriment.
Yeah,
it's just my opinion.
No, I agree in the sense of I think there's a danger that you can actually be over-inspired, and then it's a very roller coaster emotion. And it's something I'm actually focused on a bit within Babylonia in the sense we must be, even when we're talking now, which is why it's great the way you're talking about things, is we have to be realistic, and be. I don't know if this will work in our favour, but we can't overdo the realism even business or whatever it is, in the sense, there's inspirational quotes out there or videos that go, I don't know, Will Smith or whatever, and they're useful, but and then as a result, the person goes, I'm going to do what I love, but then they don't have that energy doesn't last unless you really understand how realistic it is and how up and down you are as a human being. Like this morning, last night was good place, wrote loads of stuff down, did the usual things. This morning, wasn't that up for it. But by the time I get here and I talk to you and we have a chat downstairs and everything else, these are all the components that people really need to really appreciate, I think.
100%. I think you put it much better than I did. I think it's true. I think that energy can take you only so far until you fall back to what it is you really care about. A lot of people fall out of love with what they thought their passion was, and which is fine. And that happens all the time. But I think that if you have a constant, and that constant in the context of these kind of businesses you're having, more often than not, is a salary. A lot of people are taking a lot of risks at a young age, and that's great. You should try things and take the sort of risks now that you're not going to take once you have a wife and kids like I do. Now it's about, how can I deliver a stable, stable life? But at the same time, be realistic. you know, if you've done 10 years in it, you're not cracking it, potentially you might want to look at something else. I want to take that bit out because
really?
I don't want to.
I
feel like I'm potentially demotivating people who are like really.
But here's the point. I don't think you are, because I think we are talking realistically. Like, there is a chance that arguably I've been in a working life for 12 years, right? I'm 30 now. It's only I've known what I really wanted to do. Sorry for tapping the mic, by the way. I know I just did that. I've realised what I wanted to do for a while. I've only put pen to paper in the past 6 to 12 months. Now I'd say I'm doing what I really want to do, right? But that's cool. That's 10 to I'm 30. Like, it's not the end of the world. Like, people do that at 50. But the point is the realism.
I think it's brilliant. I'm proud of you for doing it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I would tear up if we went on camera. You're talking about just to sort of continue with that. What's your constant then? You said you need certain constants. What's your constant?
I'd say the most important thing to me in my professional life has been a salary. I think having a predictable income has been a very stabilising factor for me, and was one of the
related to the rest of your life in a great way.
And was well, not initially. When I was initially being paid 12 grand to sell women's denim, I wasn't living a great life. But the point is, I suffer with ADHD, and my thoughts are all over the place all of the time. And as a result, my life was, for a lot of it, all over the place all the time, high, low, all over the fucking place, unmanageable energy levels. And having that constant of a salary that I knew was coming in, and the structure of knowing I had to turn up to work to get that salary, was massively stabilising, anchoring in the best way possible in my life, and provided me with structure and a foundation from which I built a proper career.
And I mean, when you started your own business, did you find it hard to maintain structure because you're not being paid by someone else? I found that a lot.
Yeah, I think that I relaunched my first business in the Middle East, and the people that I'm working with, the majority of whom are from India and Pakistan, the work ethic is something you won't find in the UK. They work morning till night. When you get there, it's dark. When you leave, it's dark. And because I had those people around me, there wasn't anything else. It was just work. And so because that was, my learning, my foundation of launching a business was surrounded by not my mates, and we don't do work beers. We still don't at that office. That then you can see how that sort of instilled a work ethic, which kind of carried through them what I've done ever since. Although there is a lot more beer in the UK now that I'm back.
It might even have one after this.
And I'm not complaining.
Yeah. How important is failure and trial and error to you?
Everything. Well, you can't learn if you don't fail. I think it's just your ability to get back up and carry on.
I agree. I totally agree.
I also think you learn two, and this is where I see crossover between kind of physical exercise and business. I think you learn the most about yourself. One, when you get punched in the mouth, and two, when you're absolutely physically exhausted, is when you find out who you actually are as a person. You learn about yourself more so than anything. All your emotions internally are exposed in a moment. And I've had both of those things, and I've learned more about myself in those two moments than any other time in my life.
Okay, and trial and error with regards to products. Have you done much of that, or I guess because you're kind of choosing products that are already made, or I guess in the sleep.
Well, we're selling into
we're
selling into very regulated categories.
Yeah,
aerosol is our biggest selling product in one business, and within sleep, we have to adhere to all of the standards you would expect, whether it be fire safety and health, whether it be stability. All our products are tested to the highest standards and have to comply with the various governing bodies. So we don't have a chance to trial it with consumers. We do run a load of testing.
More in iteration sense.
Oh, so yeah, we trial pillow, for example. We trial the fragrances, people give feedback. We do huge user trials, send them out to 400, 500 people. Pillows is the same thing. Some of our osteos and chiros trial them on frontline patients to get feedback. So we're constantly we're constantly testing new products, see what people like, people don't. But once you bring it to market, it has to be the finished, lab-tested version.
Talking about when you're identifying markets and the emerging bit, just to touch on that, you've also told me in the past about your interest in mature markets. Could you just explain what you mean by mature markets, and then why you tend to think that you can make an indent in a product placement sort of situation there.
So I think that, let's talk about UK market, for example, 70 million people, spoiled for choice, very few new categories popping up, tends to be just innovations on existing themes. So if you use sleep as an example, there's no shortage of pillows that you as a consumer can go out and buy between 20 and 200 pounds. Mm-hmm. But education was lacking in sleep, and that's where we introduced Cali Sleep. So I think there's a lot to be said for innovating on the fringes of some of the more established categories. When I talk about mature markets, I talk about markets like the UK, like the US, deep infrastructure, lots of choice, high level of disposable income for the most part, and you're unlikely to be able to turn ahead unless you do something quite special. Whereas in the emerging markets, there are some very sort of sparsely populated or fragmented markets like India, for example, that has 1.2 billion people, was a huge continent, very poor distribution infrastructure, very low average income, where just by having a product in the market, there's probably going to be some interest. We're too smart here. So that's kind of how I separate the number of products available within a given population. And in terms of innovation, I would say you stand a much greater chance of succeeding within emerging markets with a simpler product just by having a decent offering broadly, available across the country, versus the UK where we're very sophisticated consumers. We've all seen a lot of product shoved in our faces at all times, but you have to work extremely hard either on the product side or the communication side. We have capitalized on communication, using communication to build businesses here recently, whereas in emerging markets, it's been a straight distribution play. It's getting a good product, the best product, not knockout. This isn't rockets and space stuff, but getting it available across countries, lots of countries.
Ori, you mentioned that you have ADHD. My sort of question to that would be, you've obviously, like you said, learned how that if you write things down, it orders your thoughts a bit more and therefore orders your life. I know you're not big on wanting to be cliche or sob stories, but how challenging has it been, and what are the real learning curves needed to tackle something like ADHD in a business sense and order within your life?
I'd say, obviously for everyone it's different. And I'd say for me it's been more of a blessing than a curse, that it has made certain things incredibly difficult, like school, for example, absorbing large amounts of information. I could write them down 10 times, I wouldn't remember them. I blank out after classes. And as a result, it knocked my confidence to thinking that I'd be terrible in some kind of professional environment, or that would impact my career terribly. But I learned, probably on my own, to channel energy. So sport was a really important outlet for me. I had unmanageable energy. I had kind of aggression problems as a result, and very impulsive decision making. And I was able successfully to channel it into sport, rugby specifically, and kept that going as long as I could. And then just did regular exercise and found ways of kind of getting rid of unwanted energy.
So physical exercise is one particular tool.
100%. I'd say physical exercise is my main tool. I still train and try to every day, if only to keep the weight off, because I eat my kids' food when we give them dinner, but about 30 fish fingers a day.
And the beer is obviously
exactly. But I started writing things down religiously. So I use these black books and I fill them non-stop, constantly writing things down. And I'd say between literally those two simple mechanisms help me manage it. But it made education very challenging, but I feel like it's almost given me a little bit of an edge. First of all, my energy never ends. I can go on 3 hours sleep every night forever. And my friends and family know this. So I guess for me it has worked, but then I have friends who really struggle, who do work kind of normal, I won't say normal jobs, but I mean jobs that require them to absorb lots of information, and they really, really struggle with it. So I did try medication for a time, but it wasn't for me. Really kind of sapped my energy, felt like I kind of, just my personality, I didn't feel like I was the same person, and had friends who did the same. Probably should have taken it for longer because failed my exams, but did very, very average in school. And if you were trying to pursue any other career route, and you needed certain grades to get into certain universities, to get certain qualifications, be it, doctorates or whatever, I think I really would have struggled.
But at the same time, the tools of, regardless of exercise, writing things down in such a scheduled manner, that must hone in. For example, if you look at your concentration levels at 19 to now, it's so dramatically different. It must be this consistency of doing that every day that makes you, it stops you from losing focus. And the reason why I asked that, I want to elaborate a touch. Sorry, but I just want to elaborate. I do think it's good for people to...
Don't apologise, Michael.
No, but I don't like to interrupt people, and it's very important that I let you flow as much as I can. But my point would be is, I feel if someone did have ADHD watching this, the fact that you have managed it without any sort of medication and you've used these tools, it's very important to really break down why that's helped so much. That's why I sort of, and see if there's a considerable difference in your behaviour as a result, purely through applied personal things as opposed to any medication.
Yeah, I think, no, it's a good question. I would say that it's about having healthy anchors for me. And I mean anchors in the most positive sense, that provide structure for me to live my life. In my life now, those structures are my business, writing things down, exercise, which is a key part of my day, and I try never to miss it. But I would also say that kind of having kids and a wife and the scheduling that goes on around that, because kids wake up at certain times, or you hope they wake up at certain times, and all of those things provide a structure that I can exist kind of successfully within. And without those kind of healthy anchors, as I call them, I think I'd still probably struggle and I'd still be as impulsive. But I do think that impulsion has helped me make quick reactive decisions in business to things that I've seen, whereas some people might take a little bit more time. And I do harp on about how data is so important in terms of decision making. I'm kind of contradicting myself in saying that actually being impulsive and saying that's an opportunity to fucking go after it has actually helped me. So I don't feel bad for having ADHD my whole life. If anything, I feel, grateful, slightly resentful of the challenges it gave me between the ages of sort of, 8 and 18, but grateful overall. And if there was any advice I could give, and I'm not qualified to give medical advice, but early, if you have children or if you're young and watching it, if you can identify it early, you can get help early. And help doesn't mean medicine or pills.
Could mean, like you said, personal help.
Exactly.
Healthy anchors.
100%.
Which, by the way, I think healthy anchors is such a good term.
100% healthy anchor. I would have loved to have known earlier that I was suffering with ADHD and not some kind of other medical problem, because for so long I had these outbursts and just crazy energy and distractibility and just lacking the ability to absorb information. And I thought for a long time something was wrong, but couldn't put my finger on it, nor could my parents. So I think that now that we know that ADHD is a thing and so many people have it, and to varying degrees, and I wouldn't even say mine is probably, mine's not to, serious extreme, thankfully, but you can fix it and you can work through it. I'm sure there's lots of information available.
But it's true. I think the point in particular that's so good to hear is that you are not even necessarily too frustrated that you have it, because you recognise that there's some qualities that might actually help. And I think that point of view is so useful, especially to someone who's younger and listening in. We're going to finish with a few quick fiery type questions.
Let's do it.
Favourite book?
Haven't read one.
Yeah, I thought you might say that. You've read a few books now, or just that you think, because if you're honest, what the concentration span's not there? Audiobooks?
I read Lest We Forget, African Slavery and Emancipation book.
And any
useful takeaways?
Yeah, any useful takeaways. By the way, if you just don't have a particular book that there is a useful takeaway, you don't have
I would say that my long-term goal is to try and help in my small way to end poverty globally. I've worked with my family on a charity in Africa and saw kind of firsthand how the life these children are born into, and no child deserves to be born into that. And like I said before, if you're lucky enough to get ahead in life, whether by your own success or you had a hand, I think you owe it to turn around and help other people up. And if there's one thing I really, really want to do when all this business rubbish is said and done, it would be to try and use it to kind of, for good and help other people.
I think that's amazing.
We haven't done it yet, but
we are starting.
We are.
No, but the fact that you're conscious of that now is great, because obviously
that's definitely the long term.
You're not even really mid-term for your
career. I think it would be selfish of me to have enjoyed and have capitalised on all this kind of travelling and stuff that I've done in emerging markets and in parts of the world who suffer so much in the hands of poverty and illness and all this stuff, and not turn around and try and help them kind of prosper.
Yeah, like you said, you've seen it firsthand, which is so important. Favourite movie?
I'm so bad at quick fire questions.
We'll take your time.
All right. Notting Hill. 100% Notting Hill. What am I talking about? All those Richard Curtis. Those are my favourite films. Notting Hill, 4 Weddings and a Funeral, Bridget Jones' Diaries, all of them. Done. Okay. Next.
So basically he's into rom-coms.
Is that a rom-com?
Well, Notting Hill's a rom-com.
4 Weddings
Bridget Jones is...
4 Weddings quite a serious film.
It's still a bit of a rom-com, I feel.
You obviously don't remember the funeral.
Oh, 4 Weddings. Oh, it's 4 Weddings and a Funeral.
4 Weddings and the Funeral.
Okay, yeah, I don't remember that one. Yeah. Right. Any brands you particularly admire?
Brands
or businesses?
This is a lot.
Go on.
Wrong guy to ask this question.
No, not wrong.
I would say for the purpose of your viewers, I think Lululemon have done the most formidable job of innovating at sort of in what was such a cluttered category. I think athleisure wear. I think they're amazing. Personal care space. I love Axe and Lynx. I think they've done a great job. Not so much on the fragrance side, but definitely on the distribution side.
Okay.
And I would also say that I love... So if I could have ever owned one brand ever, it would be Pseudo Creme.
Okay, why?
It's one product. It's one formulation. It's like 40 years old. It's never changed. You can use it for anything. Literally anything. Trust me, I've tried.
Do you want to elaborate on that?
Well, I've got kids now, and I know I use it for them.
Okay, fine.
And I've used it for... I can't... It's unlimited uses.
Okay. So longevity and the fact that they haven't had to compromise at all, just the whole way through.
It's the formulation is unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. Pseudocreme I'd love to have owned. And I also... You see, I told you shouldn't have asked me.
No, keep going.
Another brand I love is... Now, these are all brands you wouldn't know.
But what I would say is I'm sure some people would, and maybe explain one or two of them and why, and what's their piece in the market, which made you appreciate it.
Well, I told you Lululemon and why.
Yeah. But these ones we wouldn't know.
Yeah.
Is there any one that would be explainable to say in layman's terms or something?
Well, it's all female intimates products like tampons and stuff, so I don't really want to do that.
That's fine.
I don't really want to do that.
Okay, fine. We'll move on.
Don't put the brands piece in it.
No, I think it's good. Right? Is there anyone you idolise in any sense of the word?
No.
Why not?
Go back yourself, bro.
So there's no one you look at.
I take inspiration.
Yeah.
As in, sort of within my sphere of influences, there are a few key kind of standout figures. They're not necessarily people you know. I look up to a lot of sportsmen, especially endurance sports people.
For what reason?
I've had failed attempts at Ironmans. I've done probably 6 or 7 marathons. I'm not built for it. You only have to look at me to know that. I'm not built for a lot of sports. Most recently, I've been inspired by Ross Edgley, who did the Great British Swim, which was like a 400-day swim around the UK. And I just think there is so much to be learned from the mindset you need to develop to become an endurance athlete of any kind. And I think it's amazing. So a lot of sports people I take inspiration from, a few business people. I love the relationship that Bill Gates and Warren Buffett have and what they've both done. I love the fact that if you ask them what's the most important thing in life, they'd say having good friends, just valuing other humans and that human engagement interaction, which I thrive off. I couldn't agree more. I don't know where I'd be without my mates. I don't know if you feel the same.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's not to be knocked at all that how valuable that is to the rest of your life.
And whereas I thought when I was younger it's all about business and just you've got to be this cold-hearted businessman and just focus on your goals and it's just about commercial and financials, it's so not. I think you live a much healthier and happier existence if you surround yourself with positive, good people. It's like the family you choose as opposed to the family you don't.
It's totally true. It's like, I don't know if you see this, but sometimes on stuff like Instagram, people are like, be prepared to lose a few friends if you're going to be successful. That's one of the sort of quotes out of those, those bullet points for success that I don't like, because I think maybe
I haven't actually heard it, but I don't agree with it.
Yeah, I just like, maybe me and you are more fortunate that for whatever reason we've had situations where we've created almost brotherhoods with certain friends.
100%. My mum actually harps on the whole time. My whole life she's gone, love is the most important thing, love is the most important thing. I always think of that song, love, love. Actually, she's probably right, because no one wants to go through life by themselves.
Couldn't agree with you more.
And if by that quote they meant lose a few people who bring negative energy or anything into your life, then maybe I do agree. But if they're supportive friends who are positive, hang on to them, because you only get so many.
Yeah.
And I can only speak for myself, but I wouldn't have it any way.
Well, I would maybe slightly elaborate and say, I think the point they try and make is you probably have to limit your friends group. But still, even that, I agree. You're not going to be best friends with 20 people. But to suggest that you can only have, I'd find it a funny.
I think
phrase,
as you get older, the windows you're working with, you only have so much time to invest in so many people.
Yeah.
And the people that want to be in your life typically make an effort to be.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're sharing positive energy and there's no harm done, of course there's going to be friends you see more and friends you see less. But I don't think there's any harm in having great people around you. I think there's only good things to come by it. And it's interesting how it all balances out.
Mm.
I can only see positive things.
Yeah, I really do agree with you on that one. All right, I think that's it. I think we're good. But how long are we in? About an hour and something?
Hour and 50.
Brilliant. All right, well, Ori, thank you very much for taking the time to do it. It was really, really good, really fascinating. Some great insights, and I hope it helps people. That's another episode of the Entrepreneur's Experience with Babylonian Media.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me, Michael. And I look forward to seeing you become a huge success in the podcast space.
It's not just the podcast space. That's all I'll say.